let's get going on this. I'm really freaking excited about this. And I did an Instagram story right before this, and I'm like, I know, guys, I'm always freaking stoked, but this time I'm extra freaking stoked with having you on here. So thank you so much for taking some time and joining this podcast interview, Own Your Life. And if you guys are new to this and you're wondering what Own Your Life is, it's about owning every single aspect of your life, including the dark moments, and repurposing them for good in your own life as well as in the life of others. And I honestly can't think of somebody else that's done it better besides Michael Unbroken. So thank you so much for jumping on this show today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's going to be good.
Yeah. So a little bit about your background. I mean, if you guys do not know him, you guys need to check it out. He has an amazing, amazing podcast, an amazing background, life coach and trauma coach, and so many more things. And I don't really think that there is a particular title that defines who you are and what you stand for besides excellence. So can you give people a little bit of your background? I mean, you've talked to and interviewed some of the biggest thought leaders in the world, but can you share with people where you came from and how this became possible for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Indianapolis in the 80s, and my mother, who was a drug addict and alcoholic, actually cut off my right index finger when I was 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
And people always go, well, how could your mother do that? And it's, it's that old adage, hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. And she married my stepfather when I was 6. He was super abusive, the kind of guy you pray is never your stepfather. And we spent the majority of my childhood homeless and deeply in poverty. And in fact, between 8 to 12, I lived with over 30 different families, getting bounced around place to place to place, churches, strangers, vans. Like, it was crazy. We'd live fucking everywhere. And all the while I'm growing up in the Mormon church, like going through this. So it's like this really weird dichotomy. And when I was about 12 years old, my grandmother had adopted me because I'd been living by myself in an abandoned house for like 6 weeks. And she came, took me, brought me in, and you'd be like, oh, well, that's a godsend. And to some extent it was, except I'm biracial, black and white, and my grandma's an old racist-ass white lady from a town in Tennessee you never heard of.
Yeah.
Right? And so much so we had a copy of Hitler's autobiography, Mein Kampf, in our kitchen.
Wow.
Right. And so, yeah, my uncle's in prison for life as a part of the Aryan Brotherhood. Like, it was fucking crazy. And this is like, and we're in the hood, right? This is very weird. So, I spent the majority of my childhood just like questioning things, trying to figure out why everything was always so chaotic and crazy. And when I was 12 years old, I effectively became a drug addict. I started getting high every day. I started popping pills. And when I was 13, I started getting drunk. And by the time I was 15, I got kicked out of school for selling drugs. And I was breaking into houses, stealing cars, running from the cops, getting shot at, hurting people. Like, it was crazy. And, my grandma, who was raising me at that time, I had asked her to sign a restraining order against my own mother because I saw the path that I was going down. And, and she did. And what's crazy is my junior year of high school, I got straight A's. Mm-hmm. And, there's a direct correlation between, the chaos of that kind of trauma and abuse and school and life and things like that. So going into and looking at life from effectively being at a rock bottom at a very young age, I got a call from my girlfriend like 3 days before high school graduation. And she was like, you're not graduating. And it was like, yeah, that's not surprising. Because I had like a 1.2 GPA and I'd missed 90 days of school my senior year. And so I go to school, go upstairs to Mr. Bush's classroom, and I tell him, I'm like, dude, how dare you fail me? Yeah. And he looks at me, he goes, I didn't fail you. You failed yourself.
Ooh.
And I was like, okay, whatever. And he looks at me, he says, literally the most important anything's ever said to me to this day. He goes, what you need to understand about life is you can't get by on your charms and good looks. If you want something, you have to earn it. And so here I am, not graduating high school, now effectively the biggest fucking loser in the entire school. My girlfriend's, I'm sure, embarrassed of me. Everyone's mad at me because look, it's almost impossible, right? It's almost impossible not to graduate my high school. So I got uninvited from every party, uninvited from all the everythings. And, I had to go to summer school. And in summer school, this really weird thing happened The teacher basically comes up to me one day. He's like, dude, we're just giving you your diploma. You get the hell out of here. And I was like,
Wow.
what? Why did this, like, I'm like, I just had to go through all this and you're just telling me I can get by on the thing that I just tried to do anyway? And so it was weird. I'm in this crazy juxtaposition, and now I'm like looking at life through this scope of trying to understand what just happened. So I get a job working at some warehouse, and I'm putting microchips in motherboards all day, standing on this assembly line. And you kind of just look at all the faces of the room, and it's desperation. This is literally where dreams go to die.
Yeah.
And something awesome happened. I got fired. Probably because I was stoned. And I'm, so I'm sitting in my car and I'm thinking to myself, like, all right, hold on. What is the solution for poverty? What is the solution for homelessness and abuse? And I was like, oh, it's got to be money, right? This is
Mm.
the one thing we never have, the one thing everyone's always talking about, so it must be money. And so what I decided to do, I said, I want to make $100,000 a year legally by the time I'm 21. Now, that
Mm.
legal part was super important because I have family in prison for life. I've been in handcuffs multiple times. And as of today, my three childhood best friends have been murdered.
Oh,
Like,
hold
I
on.
knew where
Wait a
I
minute.
was going.
Your three
Yeah.
childhood best friend. Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
And so, it's like I knew where I was going. Like, I knew exactly what was going to happen. And so that declaration was super important. And so I just started learning skills. And at 18 years old, I landed a job with a fast food restaurant. And I had 52 people under me learning to do inventory loss, hiring, firing, development, shrink, read P&Ls. And I'm basically running a business as a baby, as a general manager and training of this place, right?
Yeah.
And this still wasn't going to put me to where I wanted to go because the marker was $100,000.
Mm.
And one day I'm chatting with my friend on MySpace, and he's like, dude, I just got a Tahoe, right? So this is the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I go, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Tahoe. You can't afford that. What are you selling? Because I was like, let me get in on this. And turns out he went and got a job with an insurance company. And
Mm.
MJ, my mind was blown because I didn't know that was a thing. The
Yeah.
only thing I knew was buy here, pay here, fast food, warehouse jobs, repos, Safeway, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh shit, that's the marker. That's how you get to it. And so what I decided to do was make that my focus.
Yeah.
And so for the next basically year and a half, I filled out resumes and applications and interviewed and got told no so many freaking times it's not funny. And then I landed a job with a Fortune 10 company with no high
Fortune
school
10.
diploma. Fortune
Ooh.
10, no high school diploma, no college education, started making six figures. And
Mm.
then I realized what most people realize when this happens, that money doesn't change your life. It only shows you who you are.
Yep.
And I find out in this, by the time I'm heading into 26, I'm 350 pounds. I'm
Okay.
smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, drinking myself to sleep. I'm stoned from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. And I put a gun in my mouth.
Mm.
I was done. I
Damn.
was like, this money was supposed to fix this, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And I was lost, and I was stuck, and I was mad. And the next day, I'm laying in bed. Now, look, you got to keep in mind, I'm fucking 350 pounds. It's 11
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning. I'm smoking a joint, eating chocolate cake, and watching the CrossFit games. Like,
You're like, all right.
I was like, if that's not rock bottom, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And I picked myself up and I went to look at myself in the bathroom mirror. Now, I'll never understand why I did this. And as I'm looking at myself, I remembered being 8 years old and the water company had come and turned our water off. Now,
Mm.
they were always turning off our water, turning off our heat in the winter, the electricity, where we're getting evicted. Again, I live with 30 different families. And so to me, it was like a Tuesday. And I went in the backyard. I grabbed this little blue bucket. I walked across the street to our neighbor's house. And for the first time, I stole water.
Mm.
And I remember being like, when I'm a grown up, this will not be my life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't financially. I had cars, I had clothes, I had women, I had all these things I thought that made life good, but I was still that hurt, lost little boy.
Yeah.
And as I looked at myself in the mirror, it was like, you fucking let yourself down.
Mm.
And I asked myself a question. I said, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? And the answer was no excuses, just results. And
Mm-hmm.
almost 12 years later, here I am talking to you.
Wow. I'm just sitting here writing notes, dude. I'm like, okay, I know this dude was a badass, but I'm like, oh my goodness, that's phenomenal. Oh my good. I'm completely baffled by all of that. For the people that are not familiar with where you're at right now, and you're a very humble dude, so I'm gonna have you brag about yourself a little bit. What have you done since then? Like what are you doing for people that are listening to this and are like, oh, okay, well, he's got a lot of things that have happened. He's doing some great things. I don't think they understand the capacity in which you're changing lives. So if people are in similar situations or came from similar situations, brag about yourself a little bit. Tell them what's possible. What are you doing now?
You know what's funny is when Grant Cardone invested in my business, he told me to take my flowers. And I thought that was this really beautiful thing because I don't typically sit in it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, next, let's go, next, next, next. Because my
Yeah.
mission is very simple. I want to end generational trauma in my lifetime. Right. And so to me, I always look at it, anything shy of that is simply just a step. And
Mm.
so when I sit and I reflect on these experiences, it's like, okay, I'll lay it to you as fact, but I try not to, I don't necessarily brag about it because I'm like, the mission hasn't been accomplished yet.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And so I've written a number one best-selling book. I've written 3 books in total. The third one's about to come out. I have one of the top 40 podcasts in the country. It's a top 10 in the world. I've interviewed some of the greatest minds on planet Earth, yourself included. I have coached thousands of people around the world. I have become an award-winning speaker. I've, spoke on stages of 4 people and then 10,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, like all that stuff doesn't fucking matter because the truth about it is like if I woke up tomorrow morning and I didn't want to do this anymore, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
The thing that is most important to me is this. When I go look in that mirror, am I okay with the person that I am?
Yeah.
And that's the only way I operate in the world. And so, yeah, I can have all these, things in the world that people look at me and they go, wow, that's incredible. But MJ, it's very simple. I made a fucking decision. I said, this is the thing I'm going to do. And I do the thing I said I'm going to do.
Yeah,
That's it.
absolutely. I love that. I love that. And I mean, you and I share a similar background on different things. When you come out of that poverty
Hmm.
mindset, and you talked about this before, hurt people hurt people. When you come out of that, you're like, hey, this is all that's possible. I know what it's like. One of my first jobs, I was a general manager at a fast food place too. Like you just think
Mm.
that's it. Payday loans, trying to
Oh
scrape
my God.
by, eating.
Those
You're
guys
so
are fucking assholes.
they are. And you're so damn broke that that's all the food that you can friggin' eat. Like, that's it. You're just
Literally.
sitting there,
That
fat as fuck, eating
that's how
fat
I put
food.
on all the weight. 100%. That was it.
Yeah, you're just like, dude, I'm so broke, I can't even afford to go and get anything else besides this fucking deep fried cheeseburger right here. But I
100%.
want to go back to what you talk about when you're looking in that mirror. Because I mean, I know you and you talked about this in the time I was on your podcast. I mean, it's right behind me, right? Can't hurt me. David Goggins, and you were talking about how I think you said you grew up in a similar area, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But what I love about that is you're talking about looking in the mirror, right? Like straight up, manning up, womaning up, whatever the hell the audience wants to say for yourself as well, audience, because this isn't just about us. Like why I brought Michael on this is because he's about legacy. He's about mission. He's about fulfilling something bigger than everything. That's why I had to ask him to brag about himself a little bit because I know that. But when it comes to this, he talks about accountability mirror, looking yourself straight in the face and being like, dude, I had a lot of shit happen to me, but I failed
Hmm.
myself. Can you walk people through that process as to what that looks like for you, accepting accountability for making something out of the life that was handed to you? What does that process look like for you then and now?
Well, you know what's really interesting is one of the things people need to really understand about coming through trauma and abuse is that, look, it's not the scars, right? It's not this finger that my mom cut off. It's not the burns. It's not the cuts. Like, that's not the thing that carried. It was the truth about trauma is the theft of identity. Right. And so you spend your whole life becoming a chameleon and bending yourself to be someone else because it's a survival mechanism. Think
Mm-hmm.
about this for a second. Your brain serves one purpose, survival. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't care about your dreams, doesn't care about your goals, doesn't care about your shirt, none of that stuff. It
Yeah.
cares about one thing: live long enough to procreate, to watch your procreations procreate. That's it, right? And
Mm.
so what happens is, as you're introduced to this stimulus as a child, the brain is compartmentalizing it. It's going, is this safe or is this dangerous?
Yeah.
If it's safe, great, we're going to keep doing it. If it's dangerous, we're not going to do it anymore, right? Because I need to survive. Well, what happens is it becomes an autonomic response in this process to put yourself in this position of doing whatever it takes to survive. The most dangerous thing that I could do as a child was to have an opinion. The
Yep.
fastest way for me to get my head slammed through a wall was to ask for something that I needed. And
Mm-hmm.
so what happens is you learn to turn off and you start placating people and you
Mm-hmm.
start being what other people need you to be. And MJ, the worst part about that, and this is the fucked up part about it, is that it actually serves you because it keeps you safe to
Yeah.
not be you.
Oh yeah.
And so you're 8, 9, 12, whatever, and like you're safe in this. And then what happens is you're 25, 36, 48 years old, and you have no idea how to be you because you've never been allotted the space to safely explore what it means to be you without ramification. And so in that, you're in this place of discovery in a way that most people who have not come through a traumatic background have discovery in childhood, and they're able to fail in a safe environment. Whereas kids who are not, when we fail, there are these drastic ramifications. And so what happens is now you're in this position of like, how can you possibly be accountable for yourself when you don't know who you are? And
Mm-hmm.
what happened was I'm in this position at 26 years old and I'm looking at, all right, how do I actually do these things? Because like we all know the thing we should be doing.
Yeah.
Right? We really truly do. But there's a really big difference between knowing and doing. And what happens is we know and we acknowledge that we know, and then we just go, okay, fine, this is my life. And what happened was I recognized two things. One, I was playing the victim all of the
Mm-hmm.
time. It was
Yeah.
always everyone's fault. It was your fault, my parents' fault, the community's fault, the teacher's fault, Obama's fault.
Damn it, Obama.
It was never Michael's fault. So
Yeah.
one, it was recognizing the truth of that. And two, it was understanding something that was actually incredibly painful when I was about 27 years old. What I had come to realize was, and this hurt a lot,
Yeah.
I had come to realize I had no confidence or self-esteem, and
Yeah.
I had never had it. Because why else would I seek food and sex and drugs and money and clothes? And so now you're in this position where you're having these thoughts about understanding what you need to do. And then comes the other side of it, which is the actual doing. Now, when I said to myself, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? And I said, no excuses, just results. I literally meant that.
Yeah.
And it was a moniker for me that was about accountability, because I'd realized like I was letting myself down. I was always letting other people let me down. And the only way that was going to change was to no longer do that. And so I don't share this a lot, but I'll share it in this context because I think it makes a lot of sense and it's a little weird. So bear with me. I love 80s action movies. All of
Yeah.
them. You name them, I love it. And the one thing they all have in common is like, it's always just like most film, a hero's journey, and there's failure, and there's this and there's that. But in the 80s, there were a lot of terrorists in those movies, right?
Yeah.
Which is really weird. Like a terrorist was taking the train. A terrorist was taking Nagatomi Plaza. A terrorist was taking the, whatever. It was always a terrorist. And so one day I'm standing in the mirror, and this was another one of those moments where like what was happening in this 3-year window after I looked looked in the mirror was arguably the most difficult 3 years of my life. And it was like, I'd take a fucking step forward and then I'd take a million steps backwards. And I was just like, fuck, man, this is so hard. Like, why am I doing this? And I went and I looked at myself in the mirror, again, having this moment because it's important. And I was like, I started calling myself a terrorist. Why? Because I don't negotiate with terrorists. And I know that's a crazy thing, but I had to play this mind trick on myself because what I realized is the only way that you build confidence in yourself is by continually doing incredibly uncomfortable things consistently.
Yeah.
And I needed some kind of fuel to push me into that accountability. And that's what it was. It was just this really fucked up mind trick that I played on myself because I had no idea how otherwise to be able to put myself in a position to be accountable.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So, and I like what you talked about when it talks to theft of identity. And obviously this isn't about me, but I completely relate to that part because I honestly didn't even know what my favorite color was until 3 years ago. There was no way to have a favorite color in my household as a kid that was not red. Your fucking favorite color was red, and you had a problem with any color besides red, then you were incorrect. So I feel that. And what I'm hearing you say is when you look in the mirror, you started realizing, like, this is who I want to be. I don't know who I want to be. I haven't been able to be who I want to be, but I'm going to look in this mirror right now, and I'm going to be like, okay, maybe I like 80s action movies, or I like all these things. And I'm going to viciously attack myself that's holding me back now from allowing me to like something else, for allowing me to like what I like and be who I am. So I hear you on that, whatever that mind trick may be to create that. And one thing that I want to tie into is in the beginning of this, you said something that everyone has heard that phrase of, I think, that hurt people hurt people. And as I hear your story, one thing I want to expand on a little bit and maybe get your thoughts on is hurt people. And sometimes that person that we hurt is ourselves. You talked about gun in your mouth. You talked about 350 pounds, all of these things. And sometimes we're the biggest person that we hurt ourselves. Do you agree with that thought process?
Yeah, but think about the yes and instead of but. Yes, and think about this for a second. What's your marker for knowing how to take care of yourself?
Yeah.
Abusive parents, people yelling at you, screaming at you, hitting you, belittling you, telling you you're not good enough, you're not strong enough, you don't matter, you're not important. This is why your parents left. This is why you're like all of those things, right? And so you're just acting accordingly.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're growing up and your brain is adapting this information, and then you get looped into the constant repeating of it, and then suddenly you're looking at your life and the thing that people fail to understand is like this game is truly about mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And the problem with our space, especially in personal development and growth, like people don't even explain what mindset means. They're just like mindset. And I'm like, hold on, guys, you keep fucking saying this, but you're not teaching people what it is. And mindset's pretty straightforward, honestly. It's this. And when you understand this, it'll change your life. It's what you think becomes what you speak. What you speak become your actions, and your actions become your reality. Yeah. That's mindset. Right. And so there are people, you're saying things that are so mean to yourself right now that if you said them to me, I would punch you in the face. And you're expecting to be successful. Right? That doesn't make sense. And so what you have to do is evaluate first and foremost, starting with self-talk and the narrative that you have for yourself, and come and reconcile the fact that you are only simply going through the motions. That's it. Because you've been led, enmeshed, and groomed into this. And so now when you bring awareness to this, what you have to do is understand something really important. This is what I teach my clients all the time.
Yeah.
When you adopt an understanding and you convince yourself what I'm about to say is true, your life will be different.
Yeah.
I am the kind of person who is kind to myself.
Yeah.
I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. Now, why would that matter? Because in these moments of decisions in which change and shape your life, if you're asking yourself, well, what would a kind person do? That's going to inform how you show up. Would a
Yeah.
kind person go to the gym? Would they take care of their body? Would they go to the doctor? Would they not get shit-faced drunk every night? Would they not cheat on their partner? Would they stop smoking cigarettes? Would they quit the job that doesn't serve them and start the podcast and build the business and help the people and do all the things?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And so when you're operating through a scope of kindness, what happens is you start thinking kind thoughts, making kind actions, and that becomes your reality.
Mm. I like that. And I think that that's a huge thing, that affirmation. And I like the fact that you took it into a standpoint of like, if I was to say to you, or you were to say to somebody else, the thoughts that are in our minds and what we say to ourselves, someone would deck us in the face. So a lot of times what
Totally.
I've seen is we have to treat ourselves as if we were somebody else. One of my favorite quotes by Jordan Peterson is, he says, treat yourself as if you were somebody you're responsible for taking care of. So when you
Mm-hmm.
have a lack of value, or you have a lack of a blueprint on what being treated right is like, a lot of the times if you self-loathe yourself, treat yourself as if your best friend or what have you, or somebody else that you would actually treat like a human, that you would talk to normally and stuff like that. You mentioned coaching. I would be inquisitive to see, what do you think? Because you've overcame a lot. Like, you've overcame a lot of shit. Like, you talked about your three best friends getting murdered, your mother, and all these things, and your grandmother. What do you think makes it so that you're able to overcome your setbacks, but a lot of people stay in that cycle? Like, what would somebody from your background, if you were to talk to them, what would be the advice you would give them on how they could transform their lives and believe something new like you and break that cycle? How did you do it, and how would you tell them to do it?
Yeah, the thing about it is you have to understand that you can't do this alone,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's no aspect of this life that you're ever going to be able to navigate by yourself. And the more that you stuff it down, the more you hide from it, the more that you try to run from the truth of your experiences, the more that it's going to consume you. And,
Yeah.
when I was 25, 26 years old and I'm in my darkest place, that's when I was like, I'm stuffing it down. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't hurt me. I'm stronger than this. I'm bigger than this, right?
Yeah.
And the more that you do this, so it's like, so I'll give you an analogy about my real life experience. I used to constantly have this nightmare. And this nightmare, I mean, it was probably for 15 years. I
Yeah.
was in a log cabin and I was with my mother and we had to go to the grocery store. We're in the middle of the woods and Freddy Krueger came and killed everybody.
Oh, damn.
And I started having this nightmare when I was like 10 years old,
Yeah.
right? Constantly reoccurring all the time. Well, one day I was watching a movie and I don't remember what the movie was called, but they said something to the effect of, when you talk about your nightmares, they lose power.
Okay.
And I started talking about that nightmare, and it just doesn't even impact me anymore. And I started talking about the trauma. I started talking about the abuse. I started talking about the background. Think about the context of the conversation we're having. I just
Mm-hmm.
told you some fucking dark shit,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
I only know one person that has ever had a childhood on par with mine,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not a competition, obviously, but
Yeah.
I'm making point about this. I'm not on the ground in the fetal position crying right now because I shared my story,
Yeah.
right? And the only way you get to that is you're going to have to seek help and guidance. You're going to have to go to therapy, get a coach, read the books, go to the seminars, do the fucking work. And the truth is, like, MJ, there's stuff that is so dark, I will never talk about it,
Yeah.
right? I will never bring it to light because it doesn't need to be. But I'm not impacted by it anymore because I showed up, because I did the thing that I knew I needed to do. And to answer your question, the reason why people can't step into what's next is because they haven't made a fucking decision.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't decided that they're going to step into what's next and be willing to suffer their way to what is next. You see, here's the truth about it, right? When we are in this place of comfort and certainty, You hear people who survive trauma all the time go, I thrive in chaos. That's the fucking dumbest thing on planet Earth. It really is.
Yeah.
Why would you want to thrive in that? Now,
Yeah.
we're built into that, sure, but there comes a moment where you're like, okay, wait a second. My relationship's a wreck. My career's in jeopardy. My health is failing. My kids won't talk to me. I'm deeply in debt. Are you sure you thrive in chaos? Because it
Mm-hmm.
sounds to me like your life's a fucking disaster. And so what you have to do is recognize that the comfort of being in chaos comes from our background.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to ask yourself, am I willing to see what's on the other side of this doorway?
Yeah.
The discomfort of the unknown, of the possibility of peace, of love,
Yes.
of companionship, of joy, of fulfillment, of happiness, of all the things that you've been denied. Now, and the only way that you get to step through that threshold is, and this is the hard part about it, is you have to be willing to suffer,
Yeah.
because it's going to be so incredibly uncomfortable to go into this place in which you're exposing your truth and your vulnerability and your pain and your hurt and all of the things that are part of this journey. And by the willingness to do that, you're going to learn about who you are. Now, you're going to fail the entire time,
Yeah.
right? Because here's the thing that you have to understand about this. Going back to this point of identity, you have never been allotted the space to be you before.
Yes.
And so now you are creating you in real time. And in the process of creating you, the only way that you learn about who you are is by this massive amount of failure that you're going to have to take, because the only way you're going to know what you like and don't like, what serves you and does not serve you, is by doing things you've never done before. That's where the discomfort comes in. That's where the suffering comes in. Now, that a lot of that is like emotional, but a lot of it is physical too.
Yeah.
Take care of your body. Wake the fuck up. Do the thing you said you're going to do. Make your bed in the morning. Like, show up in your life. You know, I remember, I'll rewind. I go back 10 years ago. Like, I started making my bed, doing the dishes, brushing my teeth. Like,
Yeah.
think about that for a second, right? It's the little things that actually matter. And so as you're in this and you want to start to create change in your life, you have to first acknowledge that your life's a fucking disaster.
Yeah.
And so many people in the society are like, oh, it's okay. Just self-care. Just take it easy. Don't worry about it. It's going to be all right. It's not going to be all right.
Yeah.
It's not all right now. And if what you're doing has got you to where you are, what the fuck makes you think what you're doing is going to get you to where you want to go?
Yeah.
It's not. And so what you have to do is you have to show up and do the difficult things so that you can what? Gain confidence.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? By continually doing incredibly uncomfortable things consistently. And there's going to be a percentage of people, no matter what, MJ, they're just not going to fucking do it.
It's true. Yeah.
At one point, you have to recognize this is a choice. And
Mm-hmm.
people will go, I'm sabotaging myself. No, motherfucker, you're making a decision. Because the second you say the word self-sabotage, you have this. If that is in your vernacular,
Yeah.
if that compound exists in your vernacular, you are making a decision to actively destroy your life.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And so you have
okay.
two choices to make: change it or shut up.
Yep. And what I like about what you said is you talk about striving in chaos. I like what you said there, because I think it's so damn impactful when it's like, okay, you're going to have to suffer. You're going to have to suffer, but you get to decide what your suffering is. Are you going to suffer in that chaos that sucks and not being able to pay your bills, having bill collectors call you, we're continuing the cycle of abuse on yourself and other people, screaming at them, being dysfunctional as shit? Or are you going to suffer with an intention? And as you were saying that, what I kept thinking, and I've never heard of or even thought of this phrase before, is suffering with intention. What is the intentionality of your suffering? And it's not negative. Life is a suffer. Life is a struggle. But what is worth suffering for is what I'm hearing you say. Is that correct?
Yeah, and suffering simply means, look up the definition, to do something uncomfortable, to do something difficult. That's suffering. It's to do something. And I put myself in difficult and uncomfortable situations every single day,
Yeah.
right? Because if you are unwilling to do that, look, and I'm not trying to be mean. I promise you I'm not. I tell people all the time, this is the truth about this.
Yeah.
I'm not here to be your friend. I'm
Hmm.
not. I'm here to be
Yeah.
your coach,
Yeah.
period. And I'm only going to give you the truth. And
Yeah.
if you're one of those people listening to this and you're like, he's an asshole, he doesn't understand trauma, he's so mean, like you're missing the boat.
Yeah.
You're missing it, because what I'm telling you very simply is you have a decision to make. You have a choice to make. There's no Disney moment.
Hmm.
Nobody's coming to rescue you. Sorry, hate to fucking break it to you. They ain't coming. So
Hmm.
you have to make a decision to create your life. And if you're unwilling to do that, but you want to sit here and complain about it, and you want to play the victim, by all means, please do.
Yeah.
Please do. But watch your life not be different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's how the cycle continues is everybody, they embrace that shame. They think they're the only one who's gone through something, the only one who's suffered, the only person that's been cursed. And I've had those thoughts myself. I think anybody that's gone through something
Of
traumatic has had
course.
those thoughts. I am the only one. And once you take off those fucking blinders and you look up and you realize that pain can be the biggest, most beautiful thing that connects us. If we understand that we can create something beautiful out of it, and that it's not our shame, but our legacy and our impact that we can create out of that pain to make something beautiful. When you say that you want to end generational trauma in your generation, in your lifetime, what does that mean to you?
That's a great question. You know what's funny? I've been on, I don't know, 300 podcasts, probably something like that. No one's ever asked me that question,
Okay.
literally. So that's an amazing question. To me, it's very simple. It's, can I give people the tools that remove and mitigate the risk of the possibility of children having childhoods like we had? That's
Mm.
it. To make that go away. And that ultimately is, look, here's the truth about it, because I'm not stupid and I'm a realist. It's improbable, it's impossible, it's far-fetched, hell, it's probably irresponsible, but that ain't gonna stop me.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's just about, everything I teach is fucking free.
Hmm.
Everything, literally, it's all there.
Yeah.
It's all there. And it's about giving people the ability to step through the doorway,
Yeah.
because I recognize and I know that 99.9% of people, they are impacted by traumatic childhood experience.
Yeah.
Go look at the research. The ACE
Mm.
survey alone, which I would call incomprehensive, I mean what I say, I don't think it's complete, estimates that 83% of people in America have had a childhood trauma.
Mm.
It's higher. How could it not be?
Yeah.
It's probably 100%. And, I think about that and it's like, okay, cool. If everyone experiences this, and yet it's the biggest elephant in the room in this country, and yet I'm one of the only people talking about it,
Hmm.
makes me say something's weird. Like,
Yeah.
I'll give you a really interesting context. So I ended up self-publishing my first book, Think Unbroken, because everyone told me no.
Okay.
Everyone was like, we can't put this out. It's called Think Unbroken, Understanding and Overcoming Childhood Trauma. Nobody's going to read it.
That's a great
And I'm
idea. It's a
like,
great book.
it is. And well, here's what's interesting. We've sold almost 10,000 copies.
Mm.
There's 50 reviews online.
Yeah.
Why? Why?
'Cause-
Because people are terrified to talk about this. Because we live in a society that simply says, oh, shouldn't you be over that? And
Mhm.
don't you understand causation and correlation? We're the sum total of all of our experiences leading up to this moment. That means
Yeah.
everything that's ever happened to us make us who we are. And so to be dismissive of your past, it's funny because it's like, you grow up in this home of abuse, you grow up in this
Yeah.
home of trauma and chaos, and you learn how to act in a certain way, and then you're an adult, and one day your friend, your partner, your coworkers, whoever, they say something to you, you go, well, this is just who I am. which is probably arguably the most dangerous sentence in the English language. And because you're that way because of your past. And until you're willing to acknowledge that, nothing's going to be different. And so ending generational trauma is about giving people the tools to be able to acknowledge that they do not have to be their past. I wrote about it in my book. It's tagline of the company. Though trauma may be our foundation, it is not our future.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Well, and that makes me think science. So I like science. Like that's for like in my mind, when it comes to overcoming trauma or creating something new, I like to take a scientific perspective of things because it's not emotional. When you come from all of this stuff and whatever that setback may be, maybe it's not childhood, maybe you lost everything in '08, maybe you went through a terrible divorce, I don't know what it is. But if you can take the emotion out of it, you can break the pattern. And I think about a couple different studies where I think they said that you think the same thoughts like every single day, like 95% of the same thoughts. So once you can realize like, okay, my life fucking sucks because I've been thinking the same thoughts since I was 5, it helps, right? They also said that scientifically you can only perceive at least one, like tops 1% of reality.
1%.
Yep. So once you realize, okay, my life is me perceiving only 1% of what's around me. What if I change that 1%, man? What would another 1% look like? What if 1%, I see Cynthia here on this live stream. That lady is by far one of the most lightning, like bubbly, exciting, the energy, Cynthia, if you're still listening to this, it's amazing. I was like, I want to take her enthusiasm for life and stick it in a bottle. But once you can sit there and you can say, there's another way to live life, another belief system, another 1% that can be the unlock, that my past doesn't need to be the future. I think that's one of the most beautiful things that you can do. And I love the fact that you said that, Michael, because I think it's so ungodly important for people that have came out of trauma that have known nothing different.
Yeah. And one of the things I think is incredible is if you are willing to sit down with a pen and a piece of paper and write out who you want to be on a long enough timeline, you can be that. Like, I am a realization of the idea of the person I thought I could be, simply. And where I want to go is 37 years away. Right? And so I just go, okay, cool. Just show up every day. Do it. Rinse and repeat. Do the hard things. Push yourself. Learn. Grow. Put yourself in the room. Invest. You know, I think about the real truth about the change, like the pendulum swing. Yeah. It comes in this acronym I created called TEAM. Time, effort, energy, money. If you want your life to change, you have to invest 1. But chances are you have to invest all 4. Yeah. And you just continue to do that and up level and up level and up level. And on a long enough timeline, you'll watch your life be different. But you have to allow yourself the space to say, yes, I'm allowed to have this. Because nobody else is going to tell you that. And to your point, you know, I remember this time going to this place and doing the payday loan. Dead fucking broke. Like beyond broke. Borrowing money from my girlfriend so I could pay our rent, and just being like, one day this will not be my life. And then looking at last year, investing basically an Ivy League education in a year in personal development. And that's not a flex. I promise you it's not. Because there was a period of time when I could not afford anything. Yeah. And what you realize is you're able to create value based on what you believe you are worth in your life. And when you do that, everything is different. But the only way you get there is you have to invest in yourself first. Time, effort, energy, money. Yeah. And you have to know that you're worth it. That's a big thing. You have to know that you're worth it, and you have to believe you're worth it. And even if you don't know either one of those things, you have to develop some type of system. And that's what I liked about your whole 80s movie thing. Some type of system to convince yourself that you are worth it, even if it's a little game, even if it's just a little something, whatever it may be, to reprogram your mind, to be able to tap into people and resources that have that light, that energy, that excitement, that enthusiasm that can show you another option
in life.
Mm-hmm.
As we come to the end of this, Michael, I wanted to ask you, what do you think that this whole owning of your past is going to create when it talks about owning your life? What's your goal with owning what you came from and the impact it's going to have on the world?
Yeah, well, look, you can let your story own you, or you can own it. And it's about control. Like
Mm-hmm.
really at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Like I think about all this. It's funny because I was out last night having dinner with someone and we were talking just about life and trauma and they're in this space too. And they were like, well, you seem like, speaking of me, they go, you seem like a very demanding person. So I'm not demanding, not in the
Yeah.
least bit. In fact, I'm pretty easygoing person. I'm
Yeah.
just massively clear
Yeah.
about what I want.
Yeah.
And with that clarity comes a control. And with that control comes the ability to live life on your terms. So that's what it's really about. It's ownership. It's about saying, this is who I am. This is what I want. I will not settle for anything less because I don't negotiate with myself or anyone else.
Yeah.
And that's the key about it. And recognizing in that process, like there's going to be collateral damage. Because
Mm-hmm.
as you grow and you become who you want to be, people around you are going to be like, you're different.
Yeah.
Why don't you come and hang out at the bar all night with us? You don't want to get high anymore. We're going to go to the strip club. Like, all those things that happen.
Yeah.
And one day I was listening to music and I was listening to Jay-Z. And there's this lyric in one of his songs that sat with me so hard that even today it's something I think about pretty much every single day of my life. It said, people around you saying that you changed. Well, I didn't do all this work to stay the same.
Mm.
And so you have to decide, who do you want to be? Focus your energy towards that. And on a long enough timeline, that will be your life.
Yes. Ah, damn. Well, if I had like 10 microphones or maybe 100, it would be like a mic drop every single time. I need to get one of those buttons like Bradley has where it's just dropping bombs. Well, thank you so much for joining this. I think this was fantastic. And any last words that you want to
Of
share with the
course.
audience?
No, again, you pointed to something and you said, we're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
There's fucking 8 billion people on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Chances are very high you ain't the only one been through some shit. So stop acting like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that separates so much shame once you realize that, for sure. Well,
100%.
thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm everywhere on social at Michael Unbroken. But again, I teach everything for free at the Think Unbroken podcast. If you go to thinkunbrokenpodcast.com or just look up Think Unbroken.
Awesome. All right, you guys, check him out. Thank you so much, Michael, for being on here. This was amazing. By far one of my favorite interviews, and absolutely love what you're doing, man. Keep changing the world.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks so much.